Has your teacher ever committed a crime in front of you in class? I was in AP History when Mrs. Lynchard pulled out her third bottle of lavender spray that period. I was sitting in the front, meaning the particles hit my face before I could turn away. Within seconds, my chest tightened and my lungs started caving. Mrs. Lynchard, please, I wheezed. I told you at the beginning of the year. I'm severely allergic to fragrance. She laughed while spraying another cloud directly at me. Allergic to smell? What's next? Allergic to sound? This is therapeutic-grade essential oil. It's literally medicine. I need to leave, I gasped, already feeling my airways constricting. Sit down, Corey. We have a test in 10 minutes. She walked to her desk and pulled out 2 more bottles, eucalyptus and peppermint. These will help you focus better. My nose started bleeding. Just a drop at first, then a stream. Sasha next to me handed me tissues. Mrs. Lynchard, he's bleeding. Detoxification, she said, filling her diffuser with all 3 oils. His body is releasing toxins. This is good for him. I stood up to leave, but she stepped in front of the door. You walk out, you get a 0, and I'll report you for truancy. I can't breathe, I managed, feeling my throat closing. Drama queen. She pulled out a 4th bottle, tea tree oil, the one that sent me to the ER last time. You know what cured my daughter's allergies? Exposure to real wellness, not big pharma poison. Then she did something I'll never forget. She grabbed my backpack, unzipped it, and dumped the entire bottle of tea tree oil inside. On my books, my laptop, everything. The reaction was instant. My eyes swelled shut, blood poured from my nose onto my desk. My skin felt like it was on fire from the inside. 8 minutes. That's all I had before my throat closed completely. My allergist made me memorize that number. Somebody call 911, Jordan yelled, reaching for his phone. Phone's in the box, Mrs. Lynchard screamed. Anyone who touches their phone fails this semester, Lisa was sobbing. You're killing him. I'm healing him. His body is fighting years of toxic buildup. She actually smiled while saying it. That's when Amber touched her face and I noticed her eyes swelling too. I can't. Something's wrong. She collapsed, wheezing. The room erupted. Kids were screaming, trying to open windows that had been painted shut. Mrs. Lynchard locked the door with her key. Nobody leaves until you see the healing crisis complete itself. Through my swollen eyes, I saw Mr. Davidson look through the door window. Mrs. Lynchard waved him away. Meditation exercise, she mouthed. He nodded and left. This is attempted murder, Jordan screamed. It's aromatherapy. She sprayed more lavender directly into Amber's face. Breathe through the healing. 4 minutes left. My vision was going dark at the edges. Blood and mucus ran down my face. Amber was turning blue on the floor. 3 other kids were having panic attacks, which made their breathing worse in the oil-filled air. Mike grabbed a textbook. I'm breaking the window. That's $500 in damages. Your parents will pay. He threw it anyway. It bounced off. Safety glass. I started crawling toward her desk where she kept the key. Each movement felt like drowning in reverse. Air going out, but nothing coming back in. Look at him. So desperate for attention. She actually laughed. Then she pulled out another diffuser from her cabinet. You know what? Let's make this a real healing session. She poured pure eucalyptus oil on the hot plate she used for her tea. The fumes hit like a wall. 2 more kids started choking. Jordan was trying to break down the door with a desk. Lisa was screaming out the window for help. You're all getting suspended, Mrs. Lynchard shrieked. This generation is so weak. I had no idea if we were going to make it out alive. The door crashes open and someone shouts my name, but I can't turn my head to see who it is. Fresh air hits my face, but my throat is too swollen to pull it in. Footsteps pound across the classroom floor. A woman in blue scrubs drops to her knees beside my desk, and I recognize Willow Brock, the school nurse. She has something in her hand, orange and plastic. She yanks up my jeans leg and jabs the auto-injector into my thigh. The click is loud even over all the yelling. She's shouting at someone behind her about dosage and timing. More footsteps, heavier ones, and paramedics in dark uniforms flood into the room. The chemical smell of the oils makes my eyes water, even though they're already swollen almost shut. Willow moves away from me toward the back of the classroom where Amber is still on the floor. I try to track her movement, but my vision is too blurry. Someone touches my wrist, checking for a pulse. The epinephrine hits my system and it feels like lightning in my veins. My airways force open just enough to suck in a tiny breath. It's not enough, but it's something. Another breath. Shallow and painful. My chest burns like someone poured acid down my throat. Willow is kneeling over Amber now with another injector. Amber's lips are blue and she's not moving. A male voice near the door is loud and firm. I recognize Colby Jennings, the school resource officer. He's blocking someone from coming back in. Mrs. Lynchard's voice cuts through everything else, shrill and angry. She's screaming about healing crises and detox reactions. Colby tells her to step back now, in a tone that means he's not asking. The paramedic beside me straps an oxygen mask over my face. The elastic pulls at my swollen skin, but I don't care because oxygen is flowing and I can breathe a little better. He's talking to his partner about starting an IV line. I feel the tourniquet go tight around my arm, then the sting of the needle sliding in. Through the plastic mask, I can see Mrs. Lynchard being walked toward the door by Colby. Her hands are gesturing wildly, and she's still talking. Something about how we're all poisoned by Big Pharma, and if we just let the oils work, we'd be healed. The small black camera on Colby's chest is pointed right at her, recording every word. I file that detail away, even though my brain feels foggy. Evidence. That's evidence. Jordan appears in my line of sight and squeezes my shoulder before the paramedics start wheeling me toward the door on a gurney I don't remember being put on. His face is white like paper, and his eyes look guilty somehow, like he thinks he should have done more. Lisa is still at the window talking to another officer who must have arrived as backup. Her face is streaked with tears and snot, and she keeps pointing at Mrs. Lynchard. The hallway is bright after the dim classroom. Students are pressed against the walls watching as they wheel me past. Some of them are crying. Others are filming on their phones. Mrs. Lynchard's voice echoes from somewhere behind us, getting fainter as we move away. The paramedic adjusts something on the oxygen mask, and my breathing gets a tiny bit easier. Outside, the air is cold and clean. No oil smell. They lift the gurney into the ambulance, and one paramedic climbs in with me while the other goes to the front. The doors slam shut. The paramedic leans over me and adjusts the oxygen flow. She asks how long I was exposed to the oils. I try to answer, but my voice comes out as a rasp. 8 minutes. That's all I manage before my throat closes up again, and I can't make any more sound. Her expression changes, tightens up. She grabs the radio and calls ahead to the emergency room. I catch words like severe reaction and protocol and possible airway compromise. The ambulance starts moving and the siren wails above us. She's starting another IV line, pushing something through it. She tells me it's antihistamines to help with the swelling. My arm feels cold where the medicine goes in. The ride feels like it takes forever, but probably it's only minutes. I keep my eyes on the ceiling of the ambulance, counting the small holes in the panels to stay conscious. The paramedic keeps checking my pulse and looking at the monitor beside me. When we stop, she says we're here and the back door's open. Bright lights, hospital smell, that clean chemical scent that's nothing like the oils but still makes my chest tight. They're wheeling me fast through automatic doors. People in scrubs are waiting, lots of them. They move me from the gurney to a bed in one smooth motion. Someone cuts my shirt off with scissors. Monitors start beeping as they attach things to my chest. A doctor leans over me, shining a light in my eyes. He's talking to the nurses about starting high-dose steroids to prevent rebound swelling. I don't know what that means, but it sounds bad. In the next room, or maybe 2 rooms over, I hear voices rising in panic. That's Amber's parents. I'd recognize her mom's voice anywhere from all the school events. She's crying and asking if her daughter is okay. Nobody answers her in a way I can hear. My parents burst through the doors and Mom's face is streaked with tears. She's saying my name over and over. Dad is right behind her, his hands shaking as he grabs the bed rail. The school must have called them, but whatever they said didn't prepare them for this. I'm hooked up to oxygen and IVs, and my face is crusted with dried blood. Mom tries to touch my face, but a nurse gently moves her hand away. Dad is staring at all the monitors like he's trying to understand what each number means. A doctor in a white coat sits down in the chair between them. He introduces himself, but I miss his name. He asks me to tell him what happened, and I try, but my voice is barely a whisper. The doctor leans in close to hear. I describe the classroom, the oils, the locked door. When I get to the part about Mrs. Lynchard pouring tea tree oil directly into my backpack, Mom's face changes from scared to something else. Furious. Dad pulls out his phone and starts taking notes, typing fast with his thumbs. His jaw is clenched, so tight I can see the muscles jumping. The doctor explains about the treatment plan, the steroids, the monitoring. He says I'm lucky Willow got to me when she did. Another few minutes and my airway would have closed completely. 3 hours pass in a blur of nurses checking vitals and adjusting medications. I drift in and out, exhausted but too anxious to really sleep. Willow appears in the doorway of my ER bay, still wearing her school nurse scrubs. She pulls up a chair next to my parents. Her voice is quiet but steady as she tells them about the incident report she filed. She's been warning Mrs. Lynchard about fragrance-free classrooms since the start of the school year. She documented every conversation, every complaint from students, every time Mrs. Lynchard dismissed the concerns. Her hands are twisting a tissue into shreds while she talks. Dad adds this to his notes. 4 hours after we arrived, Principal Margot Cleveland shows up. She has her concerned administrator face on, the one she uses at the school assemblies. She starts talking about unfortunate misunderstandings and well-intentioned teachers who made mistakes. Dad cuts her off mid-sentence with a flat recitation of facts from his phone notes. The times, the warnings, the locked door, the deliberate exposure. Principal Cleveland's expression shifts. The concern disappears and something defensive takes its place. She retreats behind phrases like pending investigation and can't discuss personnel matters. Mom asks when they plan to press charges. Principal Cleveland blinks like she didn't expect that question. She says the district will handle it internally. Dad says that's not good enough and asks if she's aware that Colby's body cam recorded everything. The principal's face goes pale. She excuses herself, saying she needs to make some calls and leaves without looking back at any of us. About an hour later, Colby comes back to my ER bay, his uniform still crisp despite the chaos he dealt with. He pulls up the same chair Principal Cleveland sat in and takes out a small notebook. Dad sits up straighter, phone ready to take more notes. Colby explains he needs my statement while everything is fresh, and he keeps his voice calm and professional like he's done this 1,000 times. I walk him through the whole thing again, my voice still raspy from the swelling. The 3 spray bottles at the start, then the 4th one with tea tree oil, then her dumping the whole bottle into my backpack. The locked door, her blocking kids from calling for help. Colby writes it all down in careful print, asking specific questions about timing and exact words she used. When I get to the part about her pouring oil on the hot plate, his pen pauses for just a second. He asks if I'm sure about that detail, and I nod, remembering the wall of fumes that hit when she did it. Dad mentions the other kids who got sick too, especially Amber, and Colby adds that to his notes. Then he does something that makes the whole thing feel suddenly real in a different way. He tells us his body cam was recording from the moment he entered that hallway. He captured Mrs. Lynchard's statements about healing and detox, her blocking the door when he ordered her to open it, the whole classroom full of choking kids. The footage shows everything. He explains this isn't just a school discipline issue anymore. With the body cam evidence and the medical records from me and Amber, the district attorney's office will probably want to file criminal charges. Dad's hand tightens on his phone. Colby pulls out a business card and hands it to Dad, saying to call if we have questions or need anything. He stands up to leave but pauses at the curtain. He tells me I did the right thing trying to protect myself, and that what happened wasn't my fault. After he's gone, Dad stares at the business card for a long time, his jaw working like he's trying not to say something angry in front of me. The nurses moved me to a regular room around 9 that night. They want to keep me overnight for observation since my reaction was so bad. Mom stays in the chair next to my bed while Dad goes home to get us both clean clothes and my phone charger. The room is quiet except for the beeping monitors and voices in the hallway. A nurse comes in every 2 hours to check my breathing, shining a light in my eyes and listening to my lungs with a cold stethoscope. She adjusts my IV medications each time, typing notes into a computer on a rolling cart. I drift in and out of sleep, exhausted but too wired to really rest. Every time I start to sink deeper, something jerks me awake. A nurse walking past with hand sanitizer that smells like chemicals. A cleaning cart in the hallway with disinfectant. Someone's flowers 2 rooms down that I can smell even through my closed door. Each time my heart races and my chest tightens before my brain catches up and reminds me I'm safe now. The oils are gone. Mrs. Lynchard is gone. I can leave if I need to. But my body doesn't believe it yet. Around 4 in the morning, I wake up gasping from a dream where I'm back in that classroom, crawling toward the desk while the door stays locked. Mom is right there, her hand on my arm, telling me to breathe slow and count with her. 1, 2, 3, 4, hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, out. We do it 5 times before my heart rate drops back to normal on the monitor. Morning comes with breakfast I can't eat and a doctor checking my chart. My throat is still raw and my eyes are puffy, but the worst of the swelling has gone down. The doctor orders another breathing treatment and says if my levels stay stable, I can go home this afternoon. Around 10, my phone starts buzzing on the bedside table where Dad plugged it in. I have 17 missed calls and 43 texts. Most of them are from classmates asking if I'm okay, but 3 are from my allergist's office. Before I can call back, my phone rings with a video call from a number I recognize. I answer, and Arav's face fills the screen, his office visible behind him with its wall of medical charts and that poster about immune responses. He doesn't do the usual doctor greeting. His face is tight with anger as he tells me the hospital forwarded my case notes to him an hour ago. He's looking at the exposure details right now and he's furious. He leans closer to the camera and explains that tea tree oil is one of the most dangerous triggers for people with my specific sensitivities. The molecular structure causes immediate airway constriction, and the fumes are concentrated enough to cause reactions even without direct contact. He asks how much was used, and I tell him about the whole bottle poured into my backpack, plus what she put on the hot plate. His expression gets even darker. He starts typing on his keyboard, telling me he's sending comprehensive written restrictions to the school right now. Not suggestions, requirements. He's also drafting 504 plan documentation that legally mandates fragrance-free accommodations in all my classes. He promises to have everything submitted by end of business today, and he uses words like federal disability law and mandatory compliance that make it sound serious. Before he hangs up, he tells me to rest and that he wants to see me in his office next week for updated lung function tests. About an hour before they discharge me, there's a soft knock on the door. Amber's parents come in looking exhausted and worried. Her mom's eyes are red like she's been crying for hours. They stand at the foot of my bed, awkward and uncertain, until Dad offers them the extra chairs. Her dad thanks me for trying to warn Mrs. Lynchard at the start, for speaking up even when she wouldn't listen. Her mom's voice breaks when she apologizes that Amber didn't say something sooner about feeling sick. She explains that Amber was scared of getting in trouble, of Mrs. Lynchard calling her dramatic like she did with other kids who complained about the oils. Now Amber is 2 floors up, still hospitalized because her reaction was bad enough that they're keeping her longer. Her mom reaches over and squeezes my hand, telling me there's a shared understanding between us now. We're survivors of the same thing, something that should never have happened. Her dad mentions they're meeting with a lawyer tomorrow. After they leave, Mom sits on the edge of my bed and we don't talk for a while. There's nothing to say that makes any of this better. I get home around 4 in the afternoon and immediately check my phone. The school sent a district-wide email 2 hours ago with the subject line, Classroom Incident Update. I open it and feel my face get hot reading the sanitized version they put out. They call it a diffuser accident and an unfortunate reaction to aromatherapy. There's nothing about Mrs. Lynchard locking the door. Nothing about her pouring oil directly into my backpack or onto a hot plate. Nothing about Amber collapsing or kids screaming for help. Just smooth corporate language about student wellness and ongoing review of classroom practices. My phone starts buzzing nonstop with texts from classmates who were actually there. Lisa sends 3 messages in all caps about how the email is complete lies. Mike texts that he can't believe they're trying to cover this up. Jordan sends me a screenshot of the email with a message saying this is garbage, followed by an invitation to a group chat he just created. The chat is titled, What Actually Happened, and there are already 12 people in it. Messages are flying as people share their anger at the school's version of events. Jordan pins a message at the top saying we need to document everything before the district tries to make it disappear. The weekend passes in a blur of documentation. I spend Saturday afternoon going through my backpack and the stuff that was inside it. Everything reeks of tea tree oil, that sharp medicinal smell that makes my chest tight even now. My backpack itself is ruined, the fabric stained and warped where the oil soaked through. My laptop screen has a crack running diagonal across it from the oil seeping into the case. The logic textbook's pages are warped and stuck together. My history notes are unreadable, the ink bleeding into brown smears. Dad sets up his phone on a tripod and photographs each item with a ruler next to it for scale, creating a detailed record of the damage. He takes shots from multiple angles, zooming in on the oil stains and the cracked laptop screen. Mom is at the kitchen table with her laptop, researching lawyers who handle school negligence cases. She's making a spreadsheet with names, specialties, and initial consultation fees. Every few minutes, she reads out a potential attorney's credentials and asks if we think they sound qualified. The house smells faintly of tea tree oil from my ruined belongings, enough that I have to use my inhaler twice. We bag everything in sealed plastic and store it in the garage where I won't have to smell it. The group chat Jordan started fills up with evidence Sunday morning. People are uploading photos they took during and after the incident. Lisa posts a picture of my blood on the front desk, dark red against the fake wood surface. Someone else shares a photo of Amber collapsed on the floor, her face visible and clearly in distress. Mike uploads photos of the multiple oil bottles lined up on Mrs. Lynchard's desk, at least 6 different kinds visible in the shot. Then Mike posts something that makes everyone stop typing for a minute. It's a video, shaky and filmed from a low angle like he was holding his phone under his desk. The footage shows Mrs. Lynchard standing at the front of the room, lavender spray bottle in hand. I'm visible at my desk in the front row, blood already running from my nose onto tissues. She raises the bottle and sprays it directly at me while I'm trying to wipe the blood away. The audio captures her saying something about detoxification and my body releasing toxins. The video is only 40 seconds long, but it's completely damning. Jordan immediately downloads it and says he's backing it up to 3 different cloud services. Other people start doing the same, creating redundant copies so nothing can be lost. Dad comes into my room and asks to see the video. I show him and watch his face go hard and angry. He takes his phone out and starts texting Mom even though she's just downstairs. Monday morning, I try to get ready for school, but my hands shake putting on my shirt. My lungs feel tight and reactive to every scent, noticing things I usually ignore. Dad's coffee, Mom's lotion, the laundry detergent on my clothes. Everything feels like a potential threat now. I make it as far as the kitchen before I have to sit down, my breathing getting shallow and fast. Mom calls the school and tells them I won't be in today. Around 10, my phone rings with Arav's office number. He's calling in a prescription for a rescue inhaler to the pharmacy near our house, something stronger than my regular one for emergencies. He wants to see me Wednesday afternoon for an emergency appointment to update my action plan. His voice is still tight with anger from our video call Friday. Before he hangs up, he mentions something that makes my stomach drop. He's currently treating 2 other students from my school for fragrance-related reactions this year. Both of them had issues in classrooms where teachers used essential oils or strong perfumes. He didn't connect it to Anderson until my case came through. Now he's wondering how many kids have been affected that he doesn't know about. Tuesday afternoon, River Walden arrives at our house with a leather briefcase and sharp focus in her eyes. Mom set up the dining room table with all our documentation spread out in organized piles. River sits down and starts reviewing everything, asking Dad to walk her through the timeline while she takes notes on a legal pad. She nods at certain points, marking things with asterisks and question marks. When Dad shows her the video Mike recorded of Mrs. Lynchard spraying me while I'm bleeding, River stops writing. She watches it 3 times, her expression getting more serious with each viewing. Then she closes her laptop and looks at all three of us. She tells us we have a strong case, both for civil damages and for forcing policy changes at the school. The body cam footage, the medical records, the witness statements, and especially that video, create a clear picture of negligence and deliberate harm. She explains that Mrs. Lynchard's actions went beyond poor judgment into reckless endangerment. The school's failure to act on prior complaints adds institutional negligence to the mix. River asks detailed questions about my medical history, the warnings I gave at the start of the year, and any documentation we have of previous incidents. Mom pulls out a folder with copies of my 504 plan from last year, Arab's medical letters and emails I sent to Mrs. Lynchard in September about my allergies. River photographs each document with her phone, building her case file. River explains that we need to act fast to preserve evidence before the district can lose anything convenient. She's seen it happen before where crucial footage gets accidentally deleted or emails disappear from servers during routine maintenance. She opens her laptop right there at our dining room table and starts drafting a legal preservation letter. She types quickly, barely looking at the keyboard, while explaining what she's including. The letter will require the school district to retain all security camera footage from the incident, all emails mentioning Mrs. Lynchard or essential oils, all incident reports filed by staff, and all personnel files related to Mrs. Lynchard, including prior complaints. She adds a section about preserving the body cam footage and any 911 call recordings. The letter includes language about spoliation of evidence and legal consequences for destroying materials relevant to anticipated litigation. She finishes the draft in 20 minutes, reads it aloud to us for approval, and then pulls out her phone to call her office assistant. She instructs them to format the letter on firm letterhead, prepare it for certified mail with return receipt requested, and get it in the mail first thing Wednesday morning. She wants documentation that the district received it and when. Before she leaves, River tells us not to post anything on social media and to tell our friends in the group chat to keep their evidence private for now. We don't want to give the district's lawyers any ammunition to claim we're trying the case in public opinion. Wednesday evening, my phone rings with the school's main number. Mom answers on speaker, and Principal Cleveland's voice comes through with a completely different tone than her defensive hospital visit. She talks about student safety and thorough review, emphasizing how seriously the district takes these matters. The words sound scripted, like someone higher up told her to stop fighting us. She explains they're assigning an investigator named Jason Castillo to interview everyone involved in the incident. He'll be reaching out soon to schedule interviews with me and the other students. Cleveland keeps using phrases like comprehensive investigation and full transparency that feel hollow after weeks of her trying to minimize everything. When she hangs up, Dad looks at Mom with raised eyebrows. Something changed. Someone above Cleveland's level must have seen River's preservation letter and realized they couldn't keep treating this like a minor discipline issue. Thursday morning, Jason calls my cell phone directly. His voice is calm and professional as he explains the investigation process and asks about scheduling my interview for next week. I tell him I need to check with my attorney, and he doesn't sound surprised. River calls back 20 minutes later after I text her. She walks me through what to expect during the interview, emphasizing that I should stick to observable facts and avoid guessing about Mrs. Lynchard's intentions or motivations. She tells me to describe what I saw, heard, and experienced without editorializing. River will attend the interview with me since this involves potential legal action. She reminds me that honesty is crucial, but so is precision. Don't minimize what happened, but don't exaggerate either. Just tell exactly what occurred in sequence. Friday, I decide to try going back to the school. Mom drives me and parks in the student lot. I'm walking toward the main entrance when someone's perfume drifts past on the morning breeze. My chest immediately tightens. The smell is floral and chemical, and my body doesn't care that it's not the same oils Mrs. Lynchard used. My vision starts tunneling, dark edges creeping in. I can't get enough air. My hands are shaking as I fumble for my inhaler, but I'm frozen in the parking lot, gasping, convinced I'm back in that locked classroom. The panic takes over completely. I'm going to die right here. Juliet McLemore, the school counselor, finds me bent over next to my car, hyperventilating. She guides me to sit on the curb and talks me through grounding techniques in a steady voice. Name 5 things I can see, 4 things I can touch, 3 things I can hear, 2 things I can smell, 1 thing I can taste. The method pulls me back gradually until my breathing slows and the parking lot comes back into focus. Juliet sits with me for 15 minutes, making sure I'm stable, before suggesting we reschedule my return for another day. Juliet sets me up with twice-weekly counseling sessions starting the following week. She teaches me the full 5-4-3-2-1 grounding method, and we practice it several times in her office. She explains that panic attacks are normal after trauma, and my body is trying to protect me from perceived danger. We work on recognizing the difference between actual threats and trauma responses. Before I leave, Juliet mentions something that surprises me. She's now documenting every fragrance-related incident that happens on campus, building an Anderson record of how widespread this problem actually is. There's careful anger in her voice when she talks about it, like she's been fighting this battle longer than I knew, and finally has ammunition to force changes. She tells me I'm not alone in dealing with fragrance reactions at the school. She just never had a case severe enough to break through the administration's resistance until mine. The weekend brings nightmares that jolt me awake gasping. I dream about locked doors and choking on oil fumes while Mrs. Lynchard laughs. I dream about trying to open windows that won't budge while my throat closes. I dream about bleeding onto my desk while everyone watches and no one helps. Each time I wake up, I have to check that my bedroom window's open, that I can actually get out if I need to. I test the window locks twice, 3 times, making sure they slide freely. Mom finds me doing this at 2 a.m. Saturday and doesn't ask questions. She just pulls the chair from my desk over to my bedside and settles in with a blanket like she used to when I was little and sick. Sunday night, she's back in the chair before I even ask. I fall asleep listening to her quiet breathing, the sound reminding me I'm safe. Monday, I make it to campus with Mom walking beside me. She stays until first period starts and everything seems okay. Second period, I'm in English when my teacher pulls out scented hand lotion and rubs it into her hands. The smell hits me and my chest immediately tightens. I raise my hand to ask to leave, but my breathing is already getting shallow and fast. The teacher sees my face and sends me straight to the nurse without questions. Willow has oxygen ready before I even sit down. She fits the mask over my face and documents the incident on her computer while I breathe. Her expression is grim as she notes this is the 3rd fragrance incident she's logged since my ER visit. She tells me she's forwarding all these reports to the district compliance office and my 504 coordinator. The Anderson is undeniable now. Mom picks me up an hour later and we drive home in silence. The 504 meeting happens Tuesday morning in Principal Cleveland's conference room. Cleveland sits at the head of the table with Willow on one side and a district compliance officer on the other. My teachers attend via video call. River arrives with Arav's updated medical documentation requiring fragrance-free classrooms as a reasonable accommodation under federal disability law. Cleveland keeps saying phrases like, "We'll try our best," and "not always feasible to control," while River calmly references specific sections of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The compliance officer takes notes and asks questions about what accommodations are medically necessary versus preferred. River presents Arav's letter explaining that fragrance exposure causes immediate respiratory distress and potential anaphylaxis for me. This isn't a preference or sensitivity. It's a documented medical condition requiring environmental modifications. Cleveland's resistance visibly weakens when River mentions that failure to provide reasonable accommodations could result in a federal complaint and investigation. They finally agree to implement fragrance-free policies for all my classes, but refuse campus-wide changes. The compliance officer drafts a plan requiring my teachers to announce the fragrance-free policy at the start of each semester and provide alternate seating arrangements if a student refuses to comply with the restriction. Students who repeatedly violate the policy can be removed from my classes. It's less protection than I actually need, but more than the school wanted to give. River accepts the compromise while making clear this is the minimum acceptable accommodation and will be monitoring implementation closely. Cleveland signs off on the 504 plan modifications, and the compliance officer promises to follow up with my teachers directly about enforcement procedures. I leave the meeting knowing I have some protection now, but also knowing it depends entirely on teachers actually following through. Wednesday afternoon, Jason interviews me in a district office conference room with River sitting beside me. He's maybe 40 with a notepad and calm expression that gives nothing away. I walk him through everything starting from the beginning of the school year when I first warned Mrs. Lynchard about my allergies. I describe each escalation, the increasing oil use, the day she poured tea tree oil in my backpack. I explain the locked door, her statements about healing and detox, the other students who got sick. Jason takes notes without interrupting, and his pen moves steadily across the page. When I mention Mr. Davidson looking through the door window and Mrs. Lynchard waving him away, Jason's pen pauses for just a second. He asks pointed questions about whether Mrs. Lynchard had been warned before that day. I tell him about my emails from September, my verbal reminders, Willow's conversations with her about fragrance-free accommodations. He notes all of it. The interview lasts 90 minutes, and by the end, I'm exhausted from reliving every detail. Thursday. Jordan texts me that Jason interviewed him, and he told everything including showing the video he recorded. Lisa texts that she gave a statement about Mrs. Lynchard's previous rants in class about chemical sensitivity being fake and big pharma conspiracies. Over the next few hours, I get messages from other classmates saying they talked to the investigator too. Mike described trying to break the window. Amber's statement covered her own reaction and hospitalization. Sasha talked about handing me tissues while I bled. The investigator is interviewing all 28 students who were in that classroom, building a comprehensive picture of what happened from multiple perspectives. Each statement adds another piece of evidence showing this wasn't a misunderstanding or accident. Mrs. Lynchard deliberately ignored warnings, locked us in, and continued using oils even while students were having medical emergencies. The investigation is finally documenting the full scope of what she did. Friday afternoon, Amber's mom calls my parents and asks if we can meet that evening. We drive to their house and sit in their living room while Amber stays upstairs. Her mom's hands shake as she tells us that Amber is still having trouble breathing, waking up from nightmares about being locked in that classroom. She pulls out a folder of emails and shows us messages she sent to Mrs. Unlinchard back in September, warning her that Amber gets bad headaches and breathing problems from strong scents. Mrs. Unlinchard responded with links to essential oil detox protocols and said the oils would actually help Amber's sensitivity. Her mom sent 2 more emails asking her to stop using diffusers during Amber's class period, and Mrs. Unlinchard ignored both of them. We're not the first students she hurt, just the ones who ended up in the hospital. Amber's parents want to file a joint complaint with us, and River agrees to represent both families. This isn't an isolated incident anymore, it's a Anderson. I spend the weekend at my laptop searching through school board meeting minutes and district records that River showed me how to access. 3 different parents complained last year about Mrs. Linchard's essential oil use causing headaches and respiratory problems in their kids. One mom wrote that her son came home with nosebleeds twice in 1 week. Another parent said her daughter missed school because the classroom gave her migraines. All 3 complaints were filed with Principal Cleveland, and the responses are identical corporate language about reviewing the concern and addressing with the teacher. Nothing actually changed. Cleveland dismissed every complaint as personal preference rather than safety issue. River adds all of this to our evidence file with notes about how the district knew there was a problem and chose to ignore it. The Anderson shows institutional failure, not just one teacher going rogue. Monday morning, I'm eating breakfast when Mom shows me an email that came through the parent portal. Mrs. Linchard's union representative filed a grievance about her being placed on administrative leave. The statement argues she was implementing wellness practices consistent with her personal teaching philosophy and didn't intend harm to any students. My hands start shaking so bad I have to put down my phone. The grievance treats my near death like a difference of opinion, like she was teaching evolution and some parents disagreed. There's no mention of the locked door, the ignored warnings, the other kids who got sick, just language about her rights as an educator and the district's hasty response to an unfortunate situation. River texts me not to respond publicly, but she's already drafting a counterstatement for the district about how this wasn't teaching philosophy. It was criminal negligence. Tuesday afternoon, a reporter from the local news station calls my parents asking about the essential oil incident at the high school. Someone leaked the story, probably one of the parents from our class who's fed up with the district's silence. The reporter asks specific questions about what happened in the classroom, how many students were affected, whether there were prior complaints. River texts immediately telling us to give no comment while the investigation is active. But the reporter's questions make it clear she already talked to multiple families and has enough information to run the story anyway. She knows about the locked door, the hospitalizations, the previous parent complaints that were ignored. The story is getting out whether we participate or not. Wednesday morning, the news story runs online with the headline, "Student Hospitalized After Classroom Aromatherapy Incident." They use careful language about a student having a severe allergic reaction during class and an ongoing district investigation. They don't name me or Mrs. Linchard, but they include quotes from anonymous parents about how they complained before and nothing was done. One parent is quoted saying their child still has headaches months later. Another talks about feeling dismissed when they raised safety concerns. The story makes the district look negligent without us saying anything. By lunch, the article has hundreds of comments, split between people horrified by what happened and essential oil defenders saying we're all overreacting to natural medicine. River forwards the article to the district attorney and the school board with a note that this is now public record. Principal Cleveland sends an email to all parents Wednesday evening with the subject line, "Student Wellness and Air Quality." The message talks about the district's commitment to reviewing air quality policies and ensuring student wellness in all learning environments. There's no mention of essential oils specifically, no acknowledgement of what actually happened, no accountability for ignoring prior complaints. The corporate speak feels like they're erasing what we survived, turning our locked room crisis into a vague policy discussion. She ends with reassurance that student safety is the district's top priority, which rings completely hollow when they were ignored 3 parents' complaints last year. I forward the email to River, who responds with one word, unacceptable. Thursday morning, River texts that the school board added air quality and student safety procedures to next week's meeting agenda. She explains this is the district's attempt to get ahead of liability by showing proactive response to the news coverage. If they implement new policies now, they can argue they took swift corrective action. River says this is actually our opportunity because board meetings have public comment periods, and everything said becomes part of the official record. She comes over Thursday evening and helps me draft a 2-minute statement. We work through 5 versions, cutting out emotion and sticking to facts. She teaches me to make eye contact with each board member, to pause after key points for emphasis, to keep my voice steady even when describing the worst moments. This is my chance to create public record of exactly what happened before they bury it in policy language about air quality monitoring. I practiced the statement all weekend with River sitting across from me timing each run-through. She coaches me on where to pause, which board members to look at during specific sentences, how to keep my breathing controlled when I describe being locked in while choking on oil fumes. We practice in front of my parents and they both cry the first time I get through it without my voice shaking. River makes me do it 12 more times until I can deliver the facts calmly, until the words feel separate from the terror I felt living through it. She explains that emotional testimony gets dismissed as dramatic, but factual testimony delivered calmly is damning. I need to sound like someone reporting events, not reliving trauma, even though inside I'm doing both. By Sunday night, I can recite the statement without notes and maintain eye contact throughout. This is my shot to make them hear what they allowed to happen. Monday morning, my phone rings and it's Amber. She's crying so hard I can barely understand her at first. Her parents decided she shouldn't speak at the board meeting. They're worried about retaliation affecting her grades and college applications. They're worried other parents will recognize her and she'll become the face of this incident. They're worried Mrs. Lynchard's supporters will target her online. Amber feels terrible, but she's too scared to go through with it. I tell her I understand, that I'm not mad, that she needs to do what's right for her. But after we hang up, I sit in my car in the school parking lot feeling completely alone in this fight. Amber's parents are filing the joint complaint, but she won't be there Tuesday night to show the board that this affected multiple students. It'll just be me standing up there, and part of me wonders if that makes it easier for them to dismiss as one kid's bad experience rather than an Anderson of harm. Tuesday night, the board meeting room is packed with parents, teachers, and community members who saw the news coverage. I sit in the front row between Mom and Dad with River on Dad's other side. The board works through routine business approving budget transfers and facility maintenance contracts, while my prepared statement feels like it's burning a hole in my pocket. I watch the board members shuffling papers and checking phones, barely paying attention to the procedural votes. Principal Cleveland sits in the administrative section looking composed and professional. The room is too warm and smells like coffee and someone's flowery perfume that makes my chest tighten slightly. River squeezes my hand once when she notices me starting to panic. I use the grounding technique Juliet taught me, counting 5 things I can see, 4 things I can hear. The board president finally announces they're moving to public comment, and my heart starts racing for real. I force myself to stand when the board president announces public comment period. My legs feel weak as I walk to the microphone at the front of the room. Mom squeezes my hand before I leave our row. The microphone is too tall and I have to adjust it down, the screech of metal making everyone wince. I grip the podium edge to stop my hands from shaking. I state my name clearly, then my school, then take a breath. The words I practiced come out steady as I describe what Mrs. Lynchard did that day. I tell them about the warnings I gave at the start of the year about my severe allergies. I describe her laughing when I asked her to stop spraying. I explain how she blocked the door when I tried to leave. I detail the tea tree oil she poured directly into my backpack while I was bleeding from my nose. My voice stays calm as I describe my throat closing, my vision going dark, 8 minutes until complete airway closure. I mention Amber collapsing, other students choking, the locked door while we begged for help. I describe Mrs. Lynchard spraying more oils while students screamed for emergency services. 2 minutes of facts delivered without emotion, just truth about what happened in that classroom. When I finish, the room is completely silent. Nobody moves or speaks. I walk back to my seat on shaking legs and sit down between my parents. The board president clears his throat and thanks me for my comments in a stiff voice. He calls the next speaker, some parent wanting to talk about the parking lot. But I watch the board members and see them looking at each other with tight expressions. The woman on the far left is wiping her eyes with a tissue. Another board member is writing notes fast on his paper. The parent finishes talking about parking, and the president asks if there are more public comments. Nobody else stands up. The president announces they need to go into closed session to discuss personnel and legal matters. He says the meeting will resume in approximately 1 hour. River leans over and squeezes my shoulder. She whispers that we did what we came to do. We got it on the record. The board members stand and file out through a side door. The audience starts talking in low voices. Some people look at me with sympathy. Others look uncomfortable like they want to leave. Mom hugs me tight and Dad tells me I did great, that I was brave and clear. We go outside to wait while the board talks behind closed doors about what they heard. Jason finishes his investigation report the week after the board meeting. River gets a copy through her discovery requests and comes to our house to walk us through what he found. She spreads the report across our dining room table, pages and pages of documentation. Jason interviewed 26 students from that class, and all of them back up my account of what happened. He got copies of Colby's body cam footage from that day. He collected incident reports that Willow filed about Mrs. Lynchard's oil use. He found the parent complaints from last year that Principal Cleveland ignored. 3 different families had complained about their kids having headaches and breathing problems from Mrs. Lynchard's classroom oils. Cleveland marked all 3 complaints as resolved with a note about discussing wellness practices with the teacher. But the complaints kept coming and nothing actually changed. Jason's conclusion section recommends immediate termination and referral to law enforcement for criminal charges. River taps the conclusion with her finger and says, "This is exactly what we needed. The investigation proves a Anderson of ignored warnings and dangerous behavior." She explains this makes the district liable for allowing it to continue after multiple red flags. River pulls up the body cam footage on her laptop so we can see what the evidence shows. The video starts with Colby running down the hallway toward Mrs. Lynchard's classroom. You can hear students screaming from inside even before he reaches the door. He tries the handle, but it's locked. He pounds on the door and identifies himself as school security. Through the door window, you can see Mrs. Lynchard standing in front of the door. The audio picks up her voice saying something about a meditation exercise. Colby orders her to open the door immediately. She shakes her head and mouths something about a healing crisis. The camera shows her turning away from the door and spraying more oils toward where students are visible. Colby's voice gets harder as he commands her again to unlock the door. She refuses, and you can hear her saying that we need to complete the detox process. Students are screaming in the background about not being able to breathe. Amber's wheezing is clearly audible on the recording. My own labored breathing sounds terrible, like I'm drowning in air. Colby finally gets the door open with the custodian's master key, and the camera shows the chaos inside. Kids are crying and choking. I'm on the floor near Mrs. Lynchard's desk, covered in blood. Amber is blue on the floor. The diffusers are running and oil bottles are everywhere. Mrs. Lynchard is still holding a spray bottle when Colby enters. The footage is devastating because it captures everything she did and said. Colby forwards his incident report and the body cam footage to the district attorney's intake division 2 days after Jason completes his investigation. River explains that the DA's office will review everything to decide if criminal charges are appropriate. We wait a week before River calls to say the DA is filing charges. They decided on reckless endangerment, which is a misdemeanor that can carry jail time and requires a review of her teaching license. River explains this over the phone while I'm doing homework. She says reckless endangerment is easier to prove than felony assault because they don't have to show Mrs. Lynchard intended to hurt us. They just have to prove she knew her actions were dangerous and did them anyway. The evidence clearly shows she was warned multiple times about my allergies and other students' sensitivities. She knew I had been hospitalized before from tea tree oil. She was told to stop using fragrances in class. She did it anyway and locked us in while we were having medical emergencies. River says the DA thinks this is a strong case that will likely end in a guilty plea. The district formally places Mrs. Lynchard on unpaid administrative leave the same day the charges are filed. Her union representative releases a statement to the local news about rush to judgment and a dedicated educator being persecuted. The statement says Mrs. Lynchard has served students for 15 years and was implementing wellness practices to help students focus. It mentions her excellent teaching record and parent testimonials. The online comments on the news article split into two camps. Some people defend essential oils and claim I must be lying about my allergies. They post about how oils are natural medicine and schools should encourage wellness practices. Other parents are horrified and share their own stories about teachers ignoring medical accommodations. One mom writes that her daughter had a seizure after a teacher refused to turn off flashing lights despite doctor's orders. Another parent describes a diabetic kid whose teacher wouldn't let him eat when his blood sugar dropped. The comment section becomes a war between natural wellness supporters and parents demanding accountability. A wellness blogger finds the news story 3 days after charges are filed. She writes a long post on her site defending Mrs. Lynchard and attacking me. The post claims I'm a victim of pharmaceutical companies who profit from keeping people sick. She says my allergies are actually toxin overload from years of processed food and chemical exposure. According to her, Mrs. Lynchard was trying to help me detox, and my body's violent reaction proves how poisoned I am. The post includes photos of Mrs. Lynchard from her social media showing her at the school events and with students. The blogger frames her as a caring teacher being destroyed for trying to heal children. Her followers start sharing the post across social media. They flood the comment sections of news articles with links to essential oil research and testimonials. Some of them find my social media accounts and start sending me messages. They link to detox protocols and tell me I'm being lied to by doctors who want to keep me sick. A few send angry messages calling me a liar who is ruining a good teacher's life. River calls when she sees the blog post and tells me to document everything but don't respond. She says they want me to engage so they can claim I'm attacking them. The harassment gets worse over the next week. I make all my social media accounts private after strangers keep finding me and sending messages. Jordan offers to help screen my messages and friend requests. He goes through everything before I see it and blocks the worst accounts. People send me links to essential oil companies and testimonials about how oils cured everything from allergies to cancer. Some messages call me a paid actor for pharmaceutical companies. Others say I'm too sensitive and need to toughen up. A few are just mean, saying I deserve what happened for being weak. The constant notifications make my phone buzz all day. I stop checking social media completely because every time I open an app, there are more messages waiting. Jordan shows me some of the worst ones, people saying Mrs. Lynchard should sue me for defamation. It's exhausting and scary having this army of strangers who think they know better than my allergist. They act like nearly dying from anaphylaxis was my fault for not being healthy enough. Mom wants to respond to defend me, but River says that will only make it worse. River drafts a cease and desist letter to the wellness blogger for defamation and encouraging harassment of a minor. The letter points out specific false statements in the blog post about my medical condition. It demands the post be removed immediately and threatens legal action if the harassment continues. River sends it through her law firm with all the official letterhead and legal language. The blog post comes down within 48 hours. The blogger posts a vague statement about respecting legal processes but doesn't apologize. River explains that while people can have opinions about essential oils and natural medicine, they can't make false claims about a specific person's medical condition. They especially can't encourage their followers to harass a minor. The legal threat worked where blocking and reporting didn't. Most of the harassment stops after the blog post disappears. A few people still send occasional messages, but Jordan keeps blocking them. River files copies of everything for potential future legal action if needed. 3 weeks pass after the board meeting before River calls about the district's attorney contacting her. They want to discuss settlement options before the criminal trial starts. River explains they're trying to resolve the civil liability and avoid a lawsuit that would cost them much more. She tells my parents we should listen to what they offer, but we're not accepting any settlement that includes a gag order. We won't sign anything that stops us from talking about what happened or prevents policy changes. The district wants this to go away quietly, but River says we have leverage because the evidence is so strong. The body cam footage alone makes them look terrible. The ignored complaints show a Anderson of negligence. Jason's investigation documented everything. River schedules a meeting with the district's attorney for the following week to hear their initial offer. She warns us it will probably be low and designed to make them feel better about their liability exposure. We'll counter with what we actually want, which is real policy change and accountability, not just money to shut us up. The settlement offer arrived by email 3 days later, a PDF with 12 pages of legal language that River printed out and spread across her desk. She read through it while I sat across from her, watching her pen mark up the margins with notes. The financial terms covered everything: medical bills paid in full, my destroyed laptop and textbooks replaced, therapy costs for the next 2 years. Even compensation for pain and suffering that added up to more money than I'd ever seen. River flipped to page 8 and tapped her pen against a section highlighted in yellow. The non-disclosure agreement took up 3 full pages. It would prevent me from ever discussing what happened in that classroom, ever naming Mrs. Lynchard publicly, ever talking to media or posting online about the incident. I couldn't even tell future colleges or employers why I had medical accommodations. River looked up and said this was completely unacceptable. They were trying to buy my silence about a teacher who nearly killed students. She started drafting our counterproposal that same afternoon, typing while explaining each change. We would accept the financial terms, but the NDA would only cover the settlement amount itself, nothing else. Then she added our real demands. The district had to implement fragrance-free policies in every classroom, not just mine. Mandatory staff training on disability accommodations every year. Quick-release window mechanisms installed in all classrooms so students could never be trapped again. Stock epinephrine injectors in every building. River finished typing and read me the last line she'd added. She told them they could buy real policy reform, or they could go to trial where a jury would hear everything. We sent the counterproposal the next morning. 2 weeks passed with no response from the district. During that time, the criminal case kept moving forward. River called one Tuesday to say Mrs. Lynchard's attorney had approached the prosecutor about a plea deal. Mrs. Lynchard would plead guilty to misdemeanor reckless endangerment. No jail time, just 2 years probation and 200 hours of community service. The key part was she would voluntarily surrender her teaching license permanently. The prosecutor wanted our input as victims before agreeing to anything. River came over that evening to explain what the plea deal actually meant. She sat at our kitchen table with her legal pad, drawing out the 2 options. Plea deal meant guaranteed conviction, and Mrs. Lynchard would definitely lose her teaching license. No chance she could ever teach again, but it also meant no jail time for nearly killing me and Amber. The alternative was going to trial where a jury might feel sorry for her. They might see a well-meaning teacher who made a mistake instead of someone who locked students in a room while they suffocated. The jury could find her not guilty, and she could keep her license. I hated every part of this choice. Mrs. Lynchard should go to jail for what she did. She poured oil on my belongings while I bled and choked. She locked the door and smiled. But River was right about the risk. If we went to trial and lost, she could do this to other students. The permanent license loss meant she was done teaching forever. That mattered more than my anger. Mom and Dad agreed after talking it through for an hour. We called the prosecutor the next day and said we would support the plea deal. The district's response to our settlement counterproposal came in the following week. They accepted everything. Full financial payment, all the policy changes, the narrow NDA that only covered the dollar amount. River scheduled another meeting to finalize details and added one more demand. The district had to issue a public statement, acknowledging that fragrance-free accommodations are required under federal disability law. They had to describe the new policies they were implementing. River told them she wanted accountability on the public record, not just a private settlement. The district's attorney tried to push back, but River reminded him about the body cam footage and 28 student witnesses. They agreed to the public statement clause. River had the final settlement documents drawn up within 3 days. Mrs. Lynchard's guilty plea hearing was scheduled for 3 months after the incident. I went to the courthouse with my parents and River, sitting in the back of the courtroom while the judge handled other cases first. When Mrs. Lynchard's case was called, she walked to the front with her attorney. She looked smaller than I remembered, her voice quiet when the judge asked how she pleaded. Guilty to misdemeanor reckless endangerment. The judge asked if she wanted to make a statement. Mrs. DeLinchard read from a paper her attorney handed her, something about not intending harm and believing in natural wellness approaches. She never actually said what she did, never acknowledged locking students in a room while they suffocated, never mentioned pouring oil on my belongings or spraying it in Amber's face. The judge sentenced her to 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service at a food bank, and permanent revocation of her teaching license. The whole hearing took 12 minutes. We walked out of the courthouse and I felt strange. Not satisfied, not happy, just tired and done with this part. The district released their public statement that same week. It went out to all families and got posted on the school website. They announced new fragrance-free policies for all classrooms, mandatory annual training for staff on disability accommodations and emergency protocols, quick release mechanisms being installed on all classroom windows, stock epinephrine injectors placed in every school building. They referenced a recent serious incident as the reason for these changes without naming me or Mrs. Lynchard specifically. It wasn't perfect. I wish they had admitted more directly what went wrong. But these policy changes were real and would protect other students. River saved copies of everything for our records. Going back to the school full-time felt scary at first. The new accommodations were in place by the start of the next semester. Every teacher announced the fragrance-free policy on the first day of class. Most students didn't care and just followed the rules. When someone forgot and showed up wearing strong cologne, the teacher quietly asked them to step out and wash it off in the bathroom. Nobody made a big deal about it. The system actually worked. I could sit in class without my chest tightening, without watching the door to make sure I could escape. Teachers kept their windows accessible. The school nurse had my updated action plan and epinephrine ready. Jordan still checked in with me between classes and ran interference when people asked nosy questions. Having these protections in place made school feel less dangerous. Juliet scheduled counseling sessions with me twice a week to work through everything that happened. The nightmares came less often now. I used to wake up choking 3 or 4 times a week, convinced I was back in that locked classroom. Now it happened maybe once a week, sometimes less. Juliet taught me techniques for managing when I smelled something strong and my chest started to tighten. The 5-4-3-2-1 grounding method helped me stay present instead of panicking. She reminded me during one session that healing doesn't happen in a straight line. Some days were harder than others. Some weeks I felt fine, and then something would trigger a bad reaction. That was normal and okay. Progress wasn't about never having bad days. It was about having more tools to handle them when they came. Arav scheduled a follow-up appointment to check my lung function and review everything. I went in on a Friday afternoon and did the breathing tests while he monitored the results. He pulled up my charts from right after the incident and compared them to the current numbers. There had been improvement. My lung capacity was better than it had been 3 months ago. The inflammation had gone down. He said my lungs had recovered well from the acute reaction, but he was clear that I would always need to be careful about fragrance exposure. My sensitivity wasn't going away. The new school policies should prevent another incident like what happened with Mrs. Lynchard. He updated my emergency action plan and gave me 2 new epinephrine injectors to keep with me. He scheduled another follow-up in 6 months to track continued improvement. Jordan started checking in with me between classes, just a quick, "You good?" or a nod that meant he had my back. When people asked nosy questions about what happened in Mrs. Lynchard's room, he would step in and change the subject or flat out tell them it wasn't their business. Lisa did the same thing, redirecting conversations when someone wanted details I didn't want to share. Mike would walk with me past the old classroom so I didn't have to go alone. We never talked about it directly, but there was this understanding between us now, like we all survived something together, and that meant something. It bonded us in a way that felt real and solid, not forced or fake. They just got it without me having to explain. 4 months after everything went down, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I almost didn't recognize. It was Amber. She said she wanted to thank me for speaking up when she couldn't, for making the board listen and pushing for changes. She told me she was seeing a therapist twice a week and doing better, though she had transferred to a different school where she could start fresh without everyone knowing her as the girl who collapsed in history class. We started texting every few weeks after that, just checking in. 2 people who went through the same nightmare finding our own ways to heal. She didn't need to be at my school or in my daily life for us to understand each other. Sometimes that distance made it easier to be honest about the hard days. The settlement check arrived on a Tuesday, a number that covered every medical bill from the ER visit and follow-ups, replaced my destroyed laptop and textbooks, and funded ongoing therapy sessions with Juliet for as long as I needed them. River called that afternoon to tell me she was closing our case, everything filed and finished. She walked me through the final paperwork, a detailed folder of what we accomplished together. Policy changes across the whole district. Criminal conviction on record. Mrs. Lynchard's teaching license gone forever. Financial accountability that meant something. River told me I should be proud of how I stood up for myself, how I pushed through the fear and made them listen. Her voice was warm but professional, and I realized this was probably the last time we would talk. The case was done. 5 months after that terrible day in AP history, I walked past Mrs. Lynchard's old classroom on my way to lunch. A new teacher stood at the board, writing something about the Civil War. A laminated sign on the door announced the fragrance-free policy in bold letters. The windows were open, fresh air moving through the room. My chest got tight for a second, that automatic fear response Juliet warned me about. I stopped walking and counted 5 things I could see, 4 things I could hear, 3 things I could touch. The tightness eased. My breathing stayed steady. The fear was still there, sitting in my chest like a weight, but it was manageable now. I wasn't alone in this anymore. The school had systems in place that would actually protect me. Teachers who followed the rules. Windows that opened when they needed to. Policies that meant something. It wasn't perfect, but it was real safety I didn't have before, and that made all the difference. Cool, so that took 5 months to resolve and resulted in actual policy changes. Shocking, I know. If listening to the slow grind of accountability was entertaining enough for you, consider subscribing. Or don't. I'm not your guidance counselor. Either way, I've got more stories about institutions finally doing the right thing after being forced to. Catch you later.